today is going to be a review, a short little review for your upcoming quiz to get ready for your homework tonight. You're going to go ahead and write this on a separate sheet of paper because you don't have any of this in your notes. So we're going to start with reviewing about our angles, the reference angle, positive and negative coterminals. So our first angle we have here is a negative 442. If I'm going to sketch this angle, remember quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4. When we have a negative angle measure, we are going to go clockwise around. So this is a negative 90, a negative 180, negative 270, negative 360. So we have to go more than one turn around. That's going to put this at a negative 450. So we're not going to quite get here. So as we go around our circle, we're going to end really close to that y-axis, but not quite there. When you draw it, we show the direction that we turned around. Now your reference angle, sometimes we confuse ourselves with what the reference angle is. Remember, the reference angle is the distance to the x-axis. It's always that distance to the x-axis, not the shortest place, because it would be shorter to go to the y-axis. So we want to ask ourselves, how much further past that negative 360 did we go to get to a negative 442? Or you can think about, how close am I? This is going to be 8 more degrees to there, which means if the whole thing's 90, the reference angle is going to be 82 degrees. The reference angle is always positive, whether the angle you're sketching is a positive or a negative angle. Our coterminals. For our positive coterminal, we want to keep on adding 360 until we get to a positive angle measure. So if I just add it one time, I'm still going to be negative. So I have to add 360 a second time. And when I add 360 a second time, I end up at a positive 278 degrees. Now, if I'm at a negative 442 and I add 360, as we said the first time, we still end up negative. We're at a negative 82. So that's one option. Or from that negative 442, you subtracted 360, which puts you at a negative 802. So either one of those would work for that angle. Now our second angle that we're graphing here is in radians. And remember, if I'm in radians and you don't feel comfortable with radians just yet, that's fine. We can go ahead and convert it into degrees. So if I want to convert this into degrees, I do 180 over pi, because remember we want those pi's to cancel out. 21 times 180 divided by 4 is going to be 945. So we've got a positive angle measured this time. And we have 0, 90, 180, 270, 360. Now if I go a whole nother one around, I'm at 720. So I know I'm going to go more than twice around. So 720 puts me at 810, adding that 90. Adding that 90 puts me at 900, and then 990. So if we went 945, we're going to be halfway between 900 and 990. So I go around my circle once, that puts me at 360. I go around a second time, that puts me at 720, and then I need to keep on going. And there we are. Our reference angle, remember, is going to be the distance to the x-axis. So I'm looking at this distance right here, which, yes, is 45. But we've got to be careful. Because remember, if I start in radians, all of my answers need to be in radians. So if I have 45 degrees, I'm going to convert that to radians. This time it's pi over 180. So 45 divided by 180 is going to give us 1/4. So that's pi over 4. We don't want to use our conversions when we're trying to find our positive and negative coterminals. One spin around the circle is at 360, and radians, one spin around the circle is 2 pi. So if I have 21 pi over 4, and I add 2 pi, that's going to put us at 29 pi over 4. So remember, when you're going in your calculator, you're just not going to add those pi's in there. Our negative coterminal, so we have 21 pi minus 2 pi. If I subtract 2 pi, I'm still at a positive 13 pi over 4. So that could be another possible answer for the positive. So I subtract another 2 pi. And when I subtract another 2 pi, now I'm at 5 pi over 4, which would be another possibility over here. So then I'm at 5 pi over 4, and I need to subtract another 2 pi. And finally, we end up at a negative 3 pi over 4. So remember, we just need one positive and one negative. Another thing that you're going to see on your quiz is going to be these 6 trig functions. Now remember, sine, cosine, and tangent, those are all reviews from geometry. And then we have their reciprocals, the cosecant, the secant, and the cotangent. Those are our new trig functions. We start by plotting our point. Remember, this is the x and this is the y, so we are going left 9, and we are going up 12. So when I plot that point, I'm creating a triangle. We went left 9, so minus 9, and up 12, so positive 12. Our reference angle is going to be that angle coming from the origin. As we go through, we need to find our hypotenuse. We know that we can do Pythagorean theorem, 12 squared plus 9 squared equals that radius of our circle squared. 144 plus 81. So we're going to get 225. We square roots, and we find that that missing piece is going to be 15. It is going to be important that when you have the right triangles, this is a right triangle, you can always use Pythagorean theorem to find that third side. So if this is my angle, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So opposite of that angle is 12, hypotenuse is 15. We do always reduce our fractions down. So it's going to be 4 over 5. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Next to my angle is a negative 9 over the hypotenuse of 15, reducing down to a negative 3 over 5. Notice how I did use that negative. The negative is a part of it. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. Here's my angle. Opposite that angle is 12. Adjacent is a negative 9, reducing down to a negative 4/3. So that's a nice review from geometry. Now the cosecant, instead of opposite over hypotenuse, it's hypotenuse over opposite, which is just the reciprocal of our sine, so it becomes 5 over 4. Secant is a hypotenuse over adjacent, so it becomes 5 over negative 3. Cotangent, again, we're going to switch those, so now that's adjacent over opposite, giving us a negative 3 over 4. So our new 3 trig functions are just reciprocals of what we remember from geometry. Our last review question for your quiz, because you will have word problems. You have a 30-foot ladder leaning against the house. So we've got a house here. Pictures always help. We have our ladder that is leaning up against the house. And that ladder, since it's leaning, that's going to be your diagonal length. That's going to be a 30-foot ladder. If the ladder reaches 20 feet up the house, what angle does the ladder make with the ground? So we're looking for that angle down there. When this is my angle of reference, I see that 20 is opposite, 30 is hypotenuse. I think to myself, which of my trig functions does that match? Sine, cosine, or tangent? Well, sine of theta is the opposite over the hypotenuse, so I'm going to use my sine function here. So we have sine of my unknown angle is the opposite side over the hypotenuse side. When we are looking at this, we see that we are missing our angle measure. When we are using our angle measure, we've got to be really careful when we use our calculator. One, when we're looking at our calculator, we want to make sure that our calculator is in degree mode. If your calculator is in radian mode, it's not going to work properly. And when I'm looking at this, since I want the angle, I'm going to use inverse trig. So the angle is the inverse sine of 20 over 30. And remember, to get this on our calculator, we hit second sine, 20 divided by 30. And we said that's 41.8 degrees. You just want to be careful on your quiz to see what I asked for. Maybe I ask you to round to the nearest tenth. Maybe I ask you to round to the nearest whole number. Just pay attention to the directions and where I'm asking you to round. All right, that is it for this review.